Today, I'm talking to the amazing Bhavini for a conversation all about what to do when you find yourself in a bit of a funk and how to let go of the guilt that often comes with it. We dive into the unexpected reality of freelance life, the power of recognising your personal patterns, and how rest, boundaries, and doing absolutely nothing can actually help you be more productive. Bhavini also shares her own experiences of struggling with this in the past and how it shaped her approach to work, life, and self-care today. If you ever feel like you should be doing more, or if you've struggled with stepping back without the guilt creeping in, this episode will feel like a big, deep breath. Bhavini's honesty and practical wisdom make this one a must listen. So, let me tell you a bit more about who Bhavini is and what she does. Bhavini has been bringing brands to life through design since 2005. After a few years in the corporate world, she launched B81 Designs in 2011, where she now helps business owners discover their perfect visual identity and stand out in style. Her design approach blends classic principles with bold, colourful twists that prove professional definitely doesn't have to mean boring. When she's not designing, you'll find her perfecting her coffee game, lifting heavy at the gym, indulging in pistachio tiramisu, or hanging out with her family and their rabbits. So that's what we're talking about and who we are talking to. But before we dive into the episode, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to tune in to show up and be heard. I really am so grateful for you. This podcast exists to help women like you simplify your business and your life so that you can stop feeling so overwhelmed. I am your host, Becky McAvoy, owner and founder of Be Heard Socials, and I am an award-winning social media marketer and international speaker who specialises in content strategy and organic growth on social media. Through this podcast, as well as my own social media, email community, and my award-winning membership, the Boss Your Socials Club, my mission is to cut through the noise to make social media marketing accessible and easy to understand for businesses that can't afford to outsource or who don't have the teams required to implement most of the advice that's being given to them. So if you want to cut through the noise and BS and get practical, actionable advice tailored specifically to make social media marketing accessible and easy to understand, or if you want to be part of a supportive community where women entrepreneurs can feel connected and inspired to achieve their dreams, then keep listening because you are in the right place. To get more tips like the ones you hear in this podcast, make sure you join my email community through the link in the show notes. All right then, without further ado, let's get started with this week's episode. Hi, Bhavini. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really good. Kids have gone back to school today, so it's a good, peaceful day here.
Yeah, we were just saying that before we started recording, that both of us normally have like a settling in day, like not really much planned in the diary. So this is a bit like I wouldn't normally have a podcast recording in because I think sometimes I just like to sit in silence once my house has actually gone quiet again. But I'm very happy to be talking to you. So it is not a chore. Maybe the editing after will be a chore, but this bit is not. So yeah, I'm very happy to have you here. I usually start the podcast just by asking, obviously they've heard a little bit about you in the intro, like your official bio, which I was saying again before we started recording. They always sound so, well, they should be formal, shouldn't they? Because they're a bio. But then what I like to ask at the beginning of the podcast is like a bit more in your own words about your story. So sort of like how you started your business, how it came about. Did you always want to be a business owner? And then just a little bit more about your business, like who are you and what do you do?
Okay, so I'm Bhavini. I'm a graphic designer. I specialise in brand identity and marketing collateral. So your brochures and your leaflets and flyers and things like that. I never, ever, ever wanted to be a business owner, ever. I wanted to be the person who did a 9 to 5, got paid at the end of the month, and it was very stable. And I would leave work and I would switch off. I wouldn't think about work. That was my, that's what I want from my career. And then I went on maternity leave, and that changed my perspective a tiny little bit. And then when I did like my keeping in touch days and figuring out how I was going to go back to work, I was at an agency in London, and my actual graphic design role got made redundant. And they said they didn't need a graphic designer anymore, but if I wanted to, I could come back as a web designer and they'd give me all the training I needed, or I could take voluntary redundancy. Web design is a very different thing to graphic design, and I had no interest in it whatsoever. I still don't to this day. So I decided to take the voluntary redundancy and try and see what would happen if I did a few projects on the side, while I looked for a job closer to home. And I did a little project for a friend who recommended me to her boss that she was working with at the time. And that turned into another little project for that same company. That then turned into could I actually do this as a permanent thing? Job hunting never even started. And here I am. That was 2011 that I did that. So here I am, however many years later, loving freelance life, loving being a business owner.
Which is incredible, isn't it? Because what is
Yeah,
that? It's like 14 years, isn't it?
yeah,
So that's like I was thinking, so I've only been in business for, I say only, but been in business for 6 years this October.
amazing.
And I had a moment the other day where I was like, oh, because we don't celebrate ourselves enough, do we? I
No,
was like, oh, that's incredible. Like we look at all these, I don't know, big wins or successes or what you can have, but actually, like still being in business, like 14 years later is absolutely amazing when you didn't even necessarily want
no,
to do
I,
it.
like, I really didn't want it. I was very much I don't want that responsibility. I don't want to do all the marketing and the admin and the invoicing and all the things that go along with being a business owner. But yeah, here I am doing it 14 years later. I'm actually really enjoying it.
And do you think now is like your worst nightmare having to go back and get an employed job?
Yes. Yes. I I couldn't be employed ever. I love the flexibility too much. When my kids were younger, it was the flexibility of, oh, okay, they're sick, I can't work today. I'll take the day off. Now it's, oh, the sun's out. I'm gonna go to the coffee shop and work from there, or I'm gonna go and meet a friend for lunch and then
Yeah.
work. I don't have to ask anybody.
Yeah, I'm just not
Yeah,
going to work at all. I'm just going to.
yeah. Sun's out. I'm not working.
No, I 100% get that. Well, I was saying again just before we started recording, we have not long come back from Tenerife, where we went in the Easter holidays, and we booked it like a week before we went. And my husband obviously had to sort out his annual leave, but he was like, "Have you got anything?" And I was like, "Well, if I have, I'll move it."
Exactly. Exactly. We've just booked a holiday at the end of the summer holidays. And although I don't take a lot of work on during the school holidays, there's one repeat client that I work for every summer on a journal that they write. It's a research journal, and the only thing I've got to do is just let them know that I'm not going to be there that week or at home that week, so we'll work around that. Other than that,
Yeah.
booked the rabbits into a boarding place, and that's it. That's all I needed to do. Got the
Yeah,
time off.
no, I love that. I think that's brilliant. And I think it kind of probably actually like some of what we're talking about now ties into what we're going to talk about today. So
Absolutely.
we I was going to say I was about to say there's not really any real structure to what we're talking about today. There is obviously this is a very professional podcast and I have planned it, but it's more of a conversation like we were saying, wasn't we, in because you said, oh, have you got any questions you're specifically going to ask? And I was like, well, I think it's going to be more of a conversation.
Yeah.
And what we'd sort of this came out of a conversation that we were having in Instagram DMs, but we're going to talk a little bit about how to get yourself out of a funk when you're just not feeling it, and letting go of guilt a little bit, which I think kind of ties into each other. But I was going to, when you were talking just then, I was going to say, well, one of the best bits is, like with school holidays, I don't have to like fight for annual leave because
Mm.
somebody else has already booked that week off or whatever. But it can also make it like a little bit difficult sometimes because you're stopping and starting a lot and all that kind of stuff. And I think sometimes that can lead you to at least feeling like you're getting in a funk far more often than you are. So I kind of think, yeah, it kind of flows into what we're going to chat about today as well. But do you find that I know your children are a little bit older than mine, but do you find that with the school holidays and stuff that the stop start makes it difficult?
It used to. It used to when I used to think that, right, okay, the school holidays are here. I've got to completely stop everything that I was working on, and then I'll have to pick it up again afterwards. And actually, once I started minimizing the amount I take on for the school holidays and realizing that I can take a little bit on, I just have to tweak my working hours a little bit. And I've said this somewhere before, I don't see it as a balance of work and life. It's a bit of a blend. So as long as we've just had the 2-week Easter holiday. So as long as my workload isn't too much, and I've set up my day so that I've got time with my kids, and maybe I might do an hour's worth of work in the evening. The stop start doesn't seem to have any impact anymore.
Yeah, because you're planning around it, which is kind of what we're gonna talk about today,
Yeah,
isn't it? Like how you do that.
yeah.
And actually, like, I like that because I would say, there's an episode that's gone out today on the day
Mhm.
that we're recording, and it's all about, so it will have been last week's episode if you're listening to this one when it came out, when it comes out. But it's all about, creating content when you feel stretched thin. And I say at the start of that podcast episode, I say, like, I can't believe I've just come back from nearly 3 weeks off, and like, I don't feel really overwhelmed, I don't feel stressed, I don't have a to-do list as long as my arm, because you kind of build those things into making it happen. And actually, this so the episode that came out today on the day that we're recording is the start of season 5 of Show Up and Be Heard. And actually, the episodes that are coming out throughout season 5 are all kind of themed around running a business that works for you rather than the other way around. And I think that's a lot of it, isn't it? Because you do have to make some difficult choices,
Yeah,
or not even necessarily difficult choices, but you do have to make some choices to be able to take school holidays off and not come back stressed,
exactly.
overwhelmed, etc. But you
Exactly.
can make those choices, and we
Yeah,
do run our own business.
and
So
it's your business. You run it the way you like running it, the
yeah,
way that works for you, right?
yeah. So what would you define if we're talking about like how to get yourself out of a funk? I suppose a good place to start is, what do you define as a funk? Like, what does that look like to you?
So the first thing I want to say in answer to that question is it's different for everyone, right? And even for me, it'll be different at times. But mostly when I'm in a funk, I know because I don't stop scrolling on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and it won't be a quick, I'm just gonna have a 5 minute breather and I'm gonna, it will just be constant, like, that doom scroll kind of thing. And I find myself potentially comparing myself to other things that I'm seeing online. And the minute that starts happening, I know I need to just stop.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's that's knowing yourself, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
knowing your own red flags, of because
yeah,
somebody else could do that and it not be,
and it'd be
a
fine.
problem, or
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But
um,
that is
yeah,
my biggest indicator of there's something going on that's making me feel a bit rubbish, and actually I need to try and figure out what it is rather than try and push through.
yeah, and it's triggering those negative
Yeah.
emotions. Like, that's kind of the yeah. Because I was thinking as well, like, sometimes, have you seen that social media trend that's going around at the moment where it's like, "Oh, I just needed a hug"? Because sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I thought I was in a funk, but I just needed a hug." Like,
Yeah.
like, the word, like, because it could be, I mean, it's a spectrum, right, isn't it, of like how deep a funk you feel like
Yeah.
you're in. But
Yeah.
actually, sometimes you can probably pull yourself out of that quite quickly. And it's not that bad, but like, it's hard to motivate yourself as a business owner or whatever. And sometimes
It
it might
is.
take, I don't know, maybe you got life stuff going on or whatever, and it takes a bit more work.
But I think
Um,
that's where when you start to recognize your patterns of behavior, you can, I know I'm saying you can do this and you can do that, and I know it's not easy for everybody, but I know for me, because I've started recognizing those patterns, I can stop myself from getting into a really deep funk.
yeah. And I suppose the simple, so, like you said, like, we can possibly sit here and say, and this is what it looks like, and this is
Oh
what will
yeah,
trigger the emotion, because people are all different.
exactly.
Um, but I suppose that is just recognize it. Like, I suppose that's the tip out of that, isn't it? Is like, if something's making you feel rubbish, question it, or just take a step back
This
to
is
breathe
it.
and
Yeah,
go, right, what's this about?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And it's okay to feel like that, but for me, I don't like getting myself so deep into that funk that it starts impacting everybody else around me. And like, when you've got kids as well, it's hard, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah,
Really
it's
hard.
hard not to put that on them
Exactly.
as well, or for,
Exactly.
I know that, and I speak about this a lot. I think generally, like, if the mum's happy in the house, everybody's happy,
This is it.
because
This
food
is
affects
it.
body, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I'll allow myself to feel whatever it is that I'm feeling, but I will always try and question it so that I can get myself back to feeling
Yeah.
like I'm okay with things.
Yeah. And do you know what? Like, because I mean, I'm the biggest advocate, and I've said it on a lot of podcasts of muting and unfollowing and all that kind of stuff if
Yeah,
people are making you feel
yeah,
rubbish. But I like one of the other things I say is like 99% of the time, them making you feel rubbish is about something going on with you,
yeah,
not
exactly,
about what
rather
they've
than
written
them.
or what
Yeah,
they've said or what they've
yeah,
done. I mean, sometimes like it might be, but I'm quite good at that now. Is going, oh right, like why has that relatively simple thing made me roll my eyes to the back of my head, or
yeah,
like get really virtuous about something?
yeah,
Oh, it's probably because I'm feeling like this about myself.
yeah. It's good to be able to start recognizing that sort of thing in yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And I literally did it this morning. I was saying to my friend before we came on here, I was like, "Oh God, have you seen like so and so?" And in the same voice note, I actually said um, something about I can't remember exactly how I said it, but I basically said, "So if we'd like to know where my head's at this morning," because it was nothing
Brilliant.
about the thing that I'd seen
Yeah.
really. It was about, like I said, like how I was feeling or what I had or hadn't put in place.
Mm.
But I like the fact that you said, like, I like the fact that that's where you went with explaining, like, what a funk is to you or how you sort of define that.
Mm.
Because I think as well, like, sometimes, and don't know whether you agree or disagree, but sometimes we could sort of see a funk as like, oh, I just can't get anything done, or I'm just not really being very productive, not getting it, like, I'm just struggling to, I don't know, find the motivation to get going, which I think is true. I think that can be getting yourself into
Absolutely.
a funk.
Yeah.
I also think there's a lot in that of like, which again I like to talk about a lot, like our need to sort of always feel productive and always feel like we need
Oh,
to be doing
yeah.
something.
I can't rest.
Yeah,
Like, I can't
exactly.
just sit on the sofa. Well, no, okay, let me start that again. I can do it now. I can just sit and rest. But there was a time years ago where I was a bit, no, I've always got to be doing something. I've always got to be either working on, client work or business work, or I've got to be cooking dinner, or I've got to be doing the washing, or there's cleaning to do, or there's something to do for the kids. I don't do that anymore. I am good at taking myself like away from busyness, I guess, and just I don't know, watching an episode of a show on Netflix, or actually going and sitting by the lake for a bit and
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
the swans and the geese and things
And
like that.
what do you think it is that changed that in you? Like, what changed your kind of attitude to that? And would you have any like, if there's someone listening who feels like they should be doing more or they can't just or like I said, like if that's their sort of definition of a funk of like I
Hmm.
just can't get going, um like what would be your advice? Like, yeah, did anything shift for you, and what advice would you give to somebody who might feel like that?
So I think that shift happened for me when I realised I was starting to get burnt out and I was taking on too much in my need to always be busy. Um, and then when I started doing, I said to you before we started recording about taking a few days off after the kids have gone back to school so that I was getting a bit of time out for myself and I was resting. It was when I started doing things like that that I realised actually this is really good for me because having, even if it's just half an hour, time of me not doing anything is actually making me feel better about client work, my own work, life in general. So it gave me a better outlook.
Yeah, and can make you more productive,
Yeah,
really, can't it? Because when you sit down
exactly.
to actually do something,
Yeah,
you hit the ground running with it
exactly.
rather than something taking you like 3 or 4 times
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. So I started realizing that actually just pushing through isn't gonna get me anywhere. It's probably gonna make me, if I'm trying to, I keep saying client work, but I'll take client work as an example. If I'm trying to design something, but I'm feeling burnt out, it's going to take me 3 times as long to do it as if I'd just allowed myself to rest for a little while, or do something different where I wasn't being productive all the time.
Yeah. And do you know what? I think that's almost like the sad truth of it, isn't it? Like that most anybody I've ever spoken to about this or who doesn't do that now or doesn't feel like that
Mm.
now has come from a place where they have burned out before. And you like there's an element that I wonder whether anybody sort of learns it until like, and if you've really experienced burnout, like in its truest form, like you know it, don't you? And you know that you're
Mhm.
never like, and I definitely have, and I've spoken about it
Yeah,
before. And you get like, for me, it's like I'm never going to make myself feel like that again.
exactly.
And
It's a big wake up
also,
call.
yeah, well, and also for me, I just learned like when it did happen, and I was employed at that point,
Mm.
like ultimately you're just a number to people. You don't
Yeah,
get any kind of medals for powering through, you don't
yeah,
get any kind of medals for going above and beyond. And it's not to say that that means like you should never go above and beyond or help people or do whatever, but if it's at the cost of your own,
well-being.
yes,
Right.
that's the word I was looking for, your own well-being, then it's an absolute non-negotiable that rest needs
Yeah,
to come first.
absolutely.
So you know, like, and I say that's kind of the sad truth. If you were to give someone, because as well, I think what I have got better at is, I think like we're all human and it's natural, isn't it? That like I still get to points, and I was probably to a little bit like it just before the Easter holidays.
Mm.
I spot the signs of it way earlier.
Yeah. You
I'm
get
pushing
better at it,
myself,
don't you?
yeah. And I get really, I mean, I know we're talking about being in a funk, but like almost the opposite of it, where I am very ambitious. I get very excited about things and I take on too much, but not from a feeling of like, I can't say no. It's from a feeling of like, I want to do it all. Like I'm really excited about all of it. And that's sort of where I was before Easter. And it was sort of towards the end of March, I was like, you are getting really tired. Like you're starting to see the signs like
Yeah.
early doors. So it goes back to what you were saying earlier about recognizing those signs in
Yeah.
yourself. So I don't think you ever stop doing it, but I think it's about recognizing it earlier, isn't it?
Yeah, and stopping before you get to that point of complete burnout
Yeah,
or spiral so deep into a funk that you find it difficult to pull yourself back
yeah.
out.
So what would you say to someone who like, would you have any kind of advice for somebody who was feeling like that, who maybe like, because we, when I was saying like, oh, it's a sad truth, isn't it, that generally you learn that from actually burning out. Somebody hasn't actually burnt out yet, they're in a pretty good place. Is there any sort of, I don't know, anything you'd say to them, like to the person that's listening that's there, like, or any advice you'd give or anything like that? Pearls of wisdom.
Um, Pearls of wisdom. I think, and as hard as this could be to implement, I think if you can start putting in pockets of rest, pockets of time out before you even get to a point of where you're thinking, "Oh, is this what burnout looks like?"
Yeah,
So start setting those habits from
yeah.
the start. It's probably the best way to go, isn't it? But that's really easy for me to say in hindsight, isn't it?
It isn't, it isn't. I was just thinking about what you said earlier about I'm trying to think whether this is when we were recording, when we weren't recording, but I'm fairly certain it was when we were recording. But you said about I think you said like rather than a work life balance, having a work life
Yeah,
blend. Is
yeah,
that how you, yeah, that's
yeah.
how you worded it, wasn't it? And it made me think about, so I am a bit obsessed with Mel Robbins. I love her podcast.
Okay.
I love pretty much everything she does, to be
Yeah.
honest. She did a podcast episode on why we should stop talking about work life balance and start talking about boundaries. Because she said basically the gist of the episode is balance doesn't exist. Like
Okay.
there's and what does balance even look like? Does that mean you're spending 50% of your energy and time where here and 50% of your energy and time there? Like it's the, and it's sort of, so basically look at boundaries instead. So like a little bit like me, a boundary for me is that I take school holidays off work,
Yeah.
and if I do work during that school holiday, it's because I've chosen to
Yeah.
rather than because I have to.
Yeah.
And so like in terms of balance, that means that during that time, balance wise, 100% of my balance is going towards the kids.
Yeah.
But it also meant that in the lead up to school holidays, work gets a heavier percentage of my time. I work slightly more evenings, possibly. And I remember I had this conversation just before the Easter holidays with my little girl, where I said to her, because she'd moaned about me working evenings, I was like, I'm
Oh,
doing this so that I've then got the next 2.5 weeks off. So my balance there absolutely wasn't 50-50, but it was around the sort of boundary stuff.
yeah.
And the other Mel Robbins thing that you've just made me think about is she's got another brilliant episode on learning to do nothing.
Oh, I need to listen to that.
Well, it's really good. It's quite an old one now, actually, because I
Okay.
listened to it when I went on holiday a couple of Christmases ago. But I'll
Mm.
see if I can find the link for you. It's learning about doing nothing. And one of the things I really liked was she said this sort of need to do something all the time, a bit like what you were talking about earlier, even comes down to, say, for example, you're doing your weekly shop in Tesco or wherever,
Mm.
And you're standing waiting to pay, and there's a queue of people. Your stuff's on the conveyor belt going through and whatever. So you're standing there. Like 99% of people will then pick up their phone and scroll their phone.
Scroll through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do
And
that.
so well, her challenge was next time you're queuing to get your, well, obviously she's American, isn't she? So she was talking about groceries, but next time you're queuing, do nothing, because you're standing there for
Yeah.
literally 5 minutes. And so, and what she's saying is basically, if you can't do nothing for 5 minutes, like, then just
No problem.
do nothing. And so I did it the next time I
Yeah.
went to do the food shop, and it's quite difficult, like to literally,
Oh, yeah.
because we've got all this stuff like at our disposal, or to text someone or to phone someone or whatever. So what you were saying then about like take pockets of time, I think it's like put little things in where you can
Yeah.
learn to do nothing. She also spoke as well about how, which I've tried to do, and I'm trying to get my son, who's 11, has now got a phone. Or even, to be fair, even my 8-year-old with her iPad, they take it with them to the toilet. And I, oh my God, leave it there. And then I look at myself and go, I look at myself and go, oh, I've literally got my phone in my hand as I go and do like whatever. So the other thing she spoke about is if you're going to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. Like it's and don't take it with you.
Yeah.
So I like that of like find those pockets of time, and it is easy to say, but actually get comfortable doing nothing, because it is quite uncomfortable to just.
It is. It is really uncomfortable. I did it on Saturday. I'd taken the girls out. We do this thing where we go for like a girly brunch once a month. And I'd taken them out on Saturday. We came home. They then had loads of revision that they needed to get on with. So they were sitting in their bedrooms doing their revision. And I went outside and put the rabbits in their little pen in the garden. And I was very tempted to then go in and, I could just, get a bit of work done. Sat on the grass, listening to some Taylor Swift music on the loudspeaker, staring at the sky, just doing nothing. And it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
That is so lovely.
Yeah. It was so nice.
But it is hard to do, isn't it? Like, and I think it's maybe starting with, so when I listen to that, so that's probably maybe about a year and a half ago. And I started to sort of put that into practice just with like standing in the food shop queue and whatever.
Cool, right?
And she said, which makes me laugh, like even when you're listening to a podcast, so like when you're listening to this podcast, you're probably doing something else at the same time.
Yes.
And she made a bit of a joke about like, I shouldn't be in the bathroom with you, like whatever it was. And don't get me wrong, I still listen to podcasts whilst I'm doing something else. It's not that that's wrong particularly, but anyway, I started to implement these really short, like, okay, if I'm standing in the food shop queue or whatever, do nothing, and it builds up to. Because I think if you try to put in pockets of time that are too long, I don't know, for you or to do nothing or whatever, it's quite difficult.
You give up, don't you? Because it seems too difficult. Whereas if you start small, actually adding a couple of minutes onto that, every few weeks, it seems a bit more manageable, right?
Yeah, and and I suppose going back to the sort of like, if you're in a funk, just take 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what has helped me. I've learned to not just get on with it and not just push through and not just be productively busy all the time.
Yeah.
You notice the signs that I'm feeling a bit and take a break, walk away from the desk, or put the bloody phone down and just go and sit and do nothing. Or if I feel like I need to be doing something, go for a walk.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and it does all build up as well, because you get to the point where, in September, I set myself a goal of, actually, no, from September, I started doing it. So I'd set it like a couple of months before to work a 4-day week.
Oh, nice.
And I did that, and it was great. But what I soon realized was the Monday, I was basically doing the food shop, getting all the clothes away from the weekend, basically, I wasn't having a day off. I wasn't working.
I was going to say, this still sounds like...
Yeah. So I was still very much like, from the point they went to school to the point they came home, I was non-stop, and I liked it, because I now call it like my life admin day, because it meant that we have more free time at the weekend, and I'm not doing that at the weekend. But I was like, but I'm still not getting the reason I set that goal was because well, I wanted to work a bit less because I'd reduced my one-to-one work, and the amount I worked needed to reflect that, because otherwise I was just earning less but working the
Yeah.
same amount of hours.
Yeah.
But also I want more time for me.
Yeah.
And some of that has come from, so I've literally just said this on my socials, but I was recently diagnosed with PMDD. And there's certain times of the month I find really hard. And so part of it was actually like, this is something I can do to help. I was like, well, I'm not helping myself, am I? Because I'm still
No.
going. Anyway, long story short, what I'm getting to, so I now do a 3.5 day, well, a 3 to 3.5 day week.
Okay.
And the idea of the other day that I'm taking, a half day to a day that I'm taking off, is that I can work if I choose to, like if I'm working on my business, rather than in my business.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But is to have some time to do nothing. And when I started doing that, so that was in January, when
Okay.
I started doing that, I found it, I was like, oh, what am I meant to do? It's like,
Nothing.
well, and if
Nothing.
I'm watching telly, I get distracted because I'll see something around the house. But again, I went back to that and I was like, right, no, start small. Because the year prior to that, I'd been doing this Mel Robbins like thing. And I was like, right, we'll start small. So I read a chapter of a book rather than going, I'm going to sit down for an hour and read. I was like, no, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read 10 pages or a
Yeah.
chapter or whatever that
Yeah.
is. And I did that for a few weeks. And then it got to the point where, so I now go to the gym in the morning on that day. And then I get back, have a shower, sort myself out. And for the last few weeks before Easter, I just laid on the bed or sat out in the garden, depending on what the weather was like, and read. But I was reading for like a couple of hours. It was really nice. I read like 3 books across
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a few weeks. But if I'd have just said, right, I'm going to sit outside for a couple of hours and read, I
Mm.
would have done it. Whereas I started by reading like a few pages.
Yeah.
It can be whatever you choose to do,
Yeah.
doesn't it? I think starting small is
It's the way to
like,
go.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Like you said, when you're at the point where you do it and you're like, oh, it's easy. You just do this. But I know how much I found that,
Not
I know
easy.
how much I struggled with that when I tried doing it. So which is why I think conversations like this are good
Yeah.
to hear from people that have struggled with it but do it.
Yeah.
Do you have any other kind of like go-to things that you do when you're maybe, and so you know what? In fact, actually, I want to ask you, rather than like, because we've spoken quite a lot about like when you're in a funk and you might need to do nothing or whatever, but if
Mm.
you're in a bit of a funk and you need to get work done, and I know we've just said some of that is by stopping because
Yeah.
you can't, like rest is productive and all that stuff. But is there anything you do, like if you have got a pressing deadline and you need to get stuff done, have you got any sort of go-to
Yeah.
tips or things that you
So
find work really well?
I have a desk that goes up and down.
Oh, amazing.
And one thing that I find that really helps, if I've got a deadline that I'm struggling with, it doesn't happen very often because I'm, like I said, I'm getting better at recognizing sort of the signs. But if there is a deadline, I move my desk up so that I'm standing. I've got a great speaker in the corner of my office. The music goes on loud. I don't care who complains, and I will sing along and just work. And you can dance around a little bit while, oh God, I can't believe I'm admitting this.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
It really helps me, and I will put on songs that have great memories attached to them, and it varies. So a couple of years ago, I went to the Jagged Little Pill 25th anniversary concert in Greenwich. So listening to a bit of Alanis Morissette, gets me quite motivated. But at the same time, I might put on the Eras Tour set list, and that makes me feel awesome, and I will start working a bit better. So yeah, music and standing up and working really helps me.
Yeah, and it's moving your body, isn't it? Are you
Yeah.
a Grey's Anatomy fan?
I used to watch it. I haven't watched it for a very long time.
So I haven't watched it for a long time, but do you remember in the like early seasons, Meredith and Christina used to dance it out, wouldn't
Yes.
they? When they
Yeah.
got really stressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the
Really helps.
yeah. Yeah.
Really
It's
helps.
just making your body about a bit, isn't it? Or going outdoor. I mean, if it's not raining, but
This is
going outdoors or
this is it. And one of my go-to things is, and you've seen it on my Instagram stories as well, is I love weightlifting.
yeah.
And I find that if I don't do that on the days that I've got it scheduled in, that doesn't help me feel motivated to start my day. So it's like it's become so ingrained in my
Yeah.
life that I need to do it. And it doesn't matter if I end up having to kind of move things around and do it in the middle of the day. Sometimes it works better because it makes me feel a bit more motivated in the afternoon. Or, where we live, we're really lucky. There's a couple of lakes nearby, and there's a really great equestrian centre. So going for a walk and seeing all the horses, or the like lake with all the swans and the ducks and the herons and stuff, kind of makes you feel a bit better and a bit more. I can get back to my desk now and I can carry on working.
Yeah, and I suppose it's the reverse of what you were saying earlier about, like, notice the things that make you feel
Mm,
bad, like notice things that make you feel good as well.
exactly. And do those things before you get to a point of where you need to do it.
Yeah, and do those things proactively
Yeah,
rather than
exactly.
because you need
Yeah,
it. Like,
yeah,
make it a habit, as so you
yeah,
don't get to the point,
yeah,
or you don't get as far to the point of needing
yeah.
it.
And
I,
then
I
and then when you start implementing those things, like you say, proactively, if you do need it because you're in a real funk, kind of works a bit quicker, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I did that this morning actually, and I don't know at what point before the Easter holidays I stopped doing it, but I'd got into a really good habit of, after I dropped the kids at school, going for like a 20-30 minute walk,
Right.
almost like a commute to work, because I was saying to you before we started recording, we live like less than a 5 minute walk from
Yeah,
school, which is great because we're always running late.
yeah,
But it means there's not much of a like actual journey to school or anything like that. And I'd got into a really good habit. It was like a commute. I'd listen to a podcast, or do whatever, or
mm,
just do nothing, like I was saying earlier. Um, but I just fell out of the habit of that. And this morning, I didn't really want to do it because I was tired. I hadn't had great sleep last night, and obviously it'd be manic because the children were going back to school. I was like, no, make yourself do it. And I did feel better once I'd done like 6,000 steps when I got to my desk, and I was like,
yeah,
right, that's setting me up for the
yeah,
day.
yeah,
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be. I laugh because I'm quite into strength training now. I've started to do it 3 times a week, and I never thought I'd be the person. And I said it to my family when I went down over Easter, and I could see the way they were like, "Oh God." I was like, I can't. I notice now if I don't do it, and I can't, like. I want to exercise because it makes me feel better,
yeah,
not because I have to do it. And I
totally.
worry about it because I like it's hard and it's whatever. But it does make me feel better, and it doesn't have to be those things. But yeah, noticing the things that make you feel
Yeah.
good. I think, do you know what? After I come off this, I was actually thinking about this morning, and you've just reminded me. I might go into, so we're both in the Being Freelance community,
Yeah.
which is where we know each other from. I might go into there and say, like, what's your go-to dance it out song, and create a playlist.
I love it.
So,
I've got a whole long list I'll put on there.
yeah, although saying that, actually, I might not even need to, might I? Because Steve's got I've never listened to them, but the disco,
Yes.
Being Freelance disco things.
Yep.
Yeah, I could just put one of those on.
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go.
But yeah, I also think I have tried to find more things that make me laugh, or deliberately, like, because I think, or smile. So like listening to
Bring
music.
you joy.
Yeah, because it's very hard to like feel in a funk and horrible if you're dancing around to Taylor Swift.
I know, right?
Yeah, and it might take a while, and you might feel ridiculous to start with, but it's hard to like hate the world when you're. I mean, my thing, you said, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, I listen to an awful lot of 90s slash early 2000s cheesy boy band music.
Oh, I love that.
Because I am a boy band till I die. I'm the
Love
world Take That fan and still love Take That. And so but it's quite nostalgic. Like, sometimes it just makes me feel good because it makes me think of a carefree time.
It's hard to feel like you're in a funk and you're not motivated when, like you say, when you're dancing or when you're smiling,
Yeah.
you're full of joy.
Yeah. Lovely, right. I am a little bit conscious of time because I've got more things. Well, I've got the questions I want to ask you at the end that I ask
Okay.
everybody. And I did say, didn't I, before we started recording, which anyone will know if they've come on and done an interview, I was like, I need to be really careful because I'd quite happy to sit here for like 3 hours and chat to you about, so what song?
Send me a list.
So I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you that I do ask everyone. But before I do, is there anything sort of else you want to say about sort of getting yourself out of a funk, or maybe like letting go of the guilt of, because we've spoken a lot about, and it sounds so cliche, doesn't it, to say we've spoken a lot about resting, but especially for women, I think a lot of guilt comes along with that.
It does.
Well, not so much for me anymore. People say that, and I'm like, oh, I don't feel no.
But initially you did,
Oh,
right?
100%.
You did.
100%.
But you learn. I think you learn to let go of that guilt after you've rested a few times and seen the impact of that rest.
Yes.
And once you start seeing what kind of impact that has on your life and the rest of your, whether it's work, personal life, whatever, that guilt sort of slowly chips away.
Yeah, and I also think if other people see that as well, like your partner or I mean, not your kids so much because they're generally not grateful for anything. But when
Teenagers.
well, no, I joke about that, but equally, like I will sometimes say to the kids, I don't know if I'm going out with friends or I'm going to my bedroom to be by myself for a bit or whatever. Like I think sometimes, like when you see that you're happier afterwards, but also when the people that you care about see that you're a nice human being,
Yeah.
if you're doing that stuff, then everybody kind of embraces it a bit more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So anything else you'd add at all before I ask you my final?
I think we've covered pretty much everything I wanted to say.
Amazing. Good job, us.
Yes.
For our first day back after the Easter holiday. That's we are this, I feel like, is like living, walking, talking proof of having a rest. Brings you back.
Indeed. We
More
are indeed.
productive. I love it. So a question that I ask everybody who comes on, obviously the podcast is called Show Up and Be Heard. And a lot of the idea behind it when I was setting it up is encouraging and empowering women-owned businesses to show up for themselves confidently. But obviously that's not an easy thing to do. Again, to start with, there's an element that it becomes easier as you do it. But is there any, like what things help you show up in your business and what tips would you give someone else to do the same?
The one thing that really helps me show up is being accountable or somebody holding me accountable. Have you done that thing? Not just having written it down on a to-do list, because I don't know about you, but if I write it on a to-do list and it's something for me to, show up, it quite often will go to the bottom of the list and it will get moved to the next day and the next day and the following day. I am bad at showing up for myself. At the moment, the thing that's keeping me really accountable is I joined Hannah's Best 90 Days Ever.
Oh, yeah.
She's breaking it down into like really small tasks. And although I haven't posted anything online because, we've been on the Easter holidays have just gone, knowing that I'm working on things in the background that will then help me, later this week and in the following weeks and stuff has been really good.
Yeah. And is Hannah Isted, isn't it?
Isted or Isted, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Hannah.
So yeah, she has the Best 90 Days Ever, which she's got as a book, hasn't she? And she's I think some kind of membership around it as well.
So it's a 90-day membership. And she's got a Slack channel, and in there she posts each morning literally a 10-minute task.
Oh, amazing. So are you actually doing that at the moment as opposed
that's what I'm doing,
yeah.
So I started it the week before the Easter holidays started, so I was like quite on top of it with what I was doing. And then the first week of the Easter holidays was fine. And then I was behind a little bit, but I'm still getting stuff done in the background that I know is going to help the future stuff.
And it's whatever that is, isn't it? Do you know what? I think you got the nail on the head there. Like accountability really is key in whatever format that you get it in, whether that's joining memberships like Hannah's, or like that's one of the reasons I set up Boss Your Socials Club, or co-working with a friend, or joining communities, or whatever it might be. Often for accountability, that's often why I post stuff on my Instagram. Like I've posted my to-do list on my Instagram stories because then I'm like, one of the things I put on there, I think, is I need to book a eye test for me and the kids, and I've meant to do that for nearly 6 weeks. I was like, do you know what? I put that on my blooming story this morning because when I come to say, oh yeah, did this, I'm going to be annoyed. I can't have to say I've done it.
And it's always that kind of either the life admin stuff or the stuff for your own business that falls to the bottom of the pile, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's, yeah, exactly. And that, when I go to do it, it will literally, in fact, I might do it when I come off of this, but it will literally take me like 5 minutes because I
Yeah,
literally need to go on the website and book an appointment.
that
It's,
that is it.
yeah,
It's that simple, right?
yeah. I think, no, I think that is nail on the head. Accountability for so
Yeah,
much in life is key. So I
yeah.
love that. Okay, a final question before I
Mhm.
ask where people can find you.
Okay.
What advice would you go back and give yourself in the early days of running your business?
Um, I would tell myself something similar to what we've spoken about. To start, like, I don't want to say scheduling in. I don't think that's the right term, but start putting in pockets of time where I'm not doing anything before I get to the point of where I need to not do anything because I actually can't. Um, because in the early days of the business, I was very much I don't know when the work's going to come. I've got to take it all. I've got to say yes to everything, and I never took holidays off. I would, when the kids were at primary school, they'd be home during the day watching TV, and I'd be working. Or once my husband got home, I'd be up working after the kids had gone to bed for a few hours. And
Yeah,
it wasn't sustainable. So in
yeah.
those days, if I could go back and tell myself, actually rethink about what you're doing in terms of how you're scheduling work in, and don't be afraid to say no to certain things and schedule that rest before your body tells you you can't carry on anymore.
Yeah, I love that as well, and I was just gonna say that's definitely a lesson I've learned as well,
Mm.
because I time block in terms, so you're saying about scheduling, and I do
Yeah,
time block, I swear by it, it's like, it really helps me. I know it doesn't suit everybody, but it really helps me. But what I used to do was literally time block every second of my day, like every minute of my day, and
love
I
it.
don't like a lunch break or
Yeah.
whatever, but there was, like, no space for, I don't know, the school ringing and saying something had happened,
Oh,
or
yeah,
can go in, do you know what? I want to dance for like 15 minutes. And it was, again, I listened to it on a podcast and I feel like it was probably Mel Robbins, but it was like, you should have space in your, there, like, where even if you're time blocking, there should be space in your calendar for things to take longer
yeah,
or go wrong, or, you've just got space and you can do an extra
yeah.
thing that you can do. So, yeah. But that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier as well, doesn't it? Of always feeling like you need to be doing
It does.
something.
It does. And it's one of those things that I guess you don't really realise until you've lived, like you said, lived through it and got to burnout.
Yeah.
And you look back and go, wow, okay.
Yeah. That was a rubbish idea.
Yeah. Who thought it'd be a good idea to take on that much work and
Yeah.
do it all
Yeah.
during school holidays?
Well, and it's hard, isn't it? I think some of it comes from, especially when you're a mum or a parent, is like, oh, I've only got the school hours, so you try
Yeah,
and cram as much as humanly possible.
yeah,
But when I was doing that as well, like, I'd literally be flying, even though we live less than 5 minute walk, I'd be flying to school and get there stressed and out of breath and whatever, and then they came out, and you're not your best self then, are you? So
no, you're not. See, do you know what I used to do? When my kids were at primary school, parking was a nightmare. So you'd have to get there probably about 30 minutes before they were due to finish. So towards the end of their time at primary, I started using that 30 minutes as my nothing time. So I'd read in the car,
yeah,
or I'd park up, and if it was nice outside, I'd just go for a wander around the parks around where their school was. And it was a really nice way of like finishing the day and making that switch between, right, work's done, I can't actually do anything more now, and kids coming home.
yeah. I love that though, because I can imagine a lot of people would still use that. And I see people, and not that there's anything wrong with this, but I see people like sharing this on social media and stuff, like, oh, they're at their school half hour early, so they've got their laptop with them and they're still working. And
So
it's so,
simple to do that, isn't it?
yeah, it's so easy because you're like,
Mm,
oh, well, I'll just get this in. But
yeah,
then again, you're like, I love that you used it to wind down and
yeah,
switch off,
yeah.
so that by the time that the kids come out of school, you're a bit more.
I'm a bit calmer.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd ever describe myself as calm. I think I'm chaotically calm.
Chaotically calm is still calm.
Go. Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, I think there's been some really good stuff in here, and I hope people have taken lots away from it. We'd love
I've
to hear
really, I've really
anybody
enjoyed
that's
chatting with
listening what
you.
your big takeaways were. But before you go,
Yes.
can you tell people where they can find you, and, well, yeah, where to come find you, and if there's anything you want to share, any freebies that you've got or your website,
Um,
please feel
you
free
can
to.
find me, if you're on social media, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as B81 Designs, and I'm on LinkedIn as Bhavini Lakhani. And my website is www.b81designs.com.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go find her because she's amazing.
Go find me.
Lovely. But yeah, no, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope everyone else listening has enjoyed it too.
Thank you for having me for a chat. It's been great.
Before you go, if you love this podcast and you're a woman running a small business who wants to make social media easier and business life less lonely, I've got something for you. The Boss Your Socials Club is here to bring you inspiration, accountability, confidence, and community. It's a place where we ban the word should because we believe in a bespoke advice that will work for you, your stage of life, and your business. As a member, you'll get a clear content plan every month, ready-to-use templates, and the accountability to actually show up. Plus, you'll have expert support and a community of incredible women who get it, want to give you advice, and want to cheer you on. Think of it like having a teeny tiny social media marketing expert in your pocket, giving you the knowledge and the assurance when it comes to posting great, engaging content on your social media platforms and showing up in a way that grows your business without the overwhelm. It's just £24 a month and you can join anytime. Head to www.beheardsocials.com/boss your socials to find out more and sign up now.